Good morning, everybody! Welcome back to another Raincoast Field School at home. Hello and welcome back to all of our Wiccaninish and Yuki Elementary students. We are so happy to be here with you today to learn and explore the Clackwa and Barkley Sound region. For those of you tuning in from a different region, drop a comment in our chat. We want to know where you're from and what grade you're in. As previously mentioned, every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 o'clock, we are going to be here live to give you a different topic each week. Following every lesson, we are going to give you guys a Raincoast challenge. So this is kind of activity that you can do after the lesson to really test your learning. And for parents, you can access this activity sheet on our website. You just need to go to the Raincoast Education Society page, and it's going to be underneath the online education tab. So everything should be listed there for you to do at home. Remember to type your questions as we go. And on Thursday, we're going to be able to answer all of those questions for you guys. You can also be sure to sign up for our weekly email so that you can join our Zoom links and always be here to learn with us. All right, so as promised, this week is going to be all about fungi. Woo! So we are going to be learning about everything to do with a fungus, where it's found, what its structure is, how it reproduces, and all of the super important qualities that it has within a forest ecosystem. Here with me today, we have Amy. She is our field school coordinator for the ucluelet region. As well, behind the scenes, we have Steph, who is our communications girl and also helps us with all the technical difficulties that we have. And of course, you have me. So my name is Taylor, and I am the field school coordinator for the tofino region. And I'm going to be with you on screen today to teach you all about fungus. Let's do it. Hey, Amy, my first question of the day is, where might you find fungus?
Well, Taylor, fungus is found in so many different locations. This is because it is such a diverse group of living things. There are approximately 1.5 million known fungi species, but scientists predict there are many more, possibly a count reaching up to 5 million worldwide. We can find fungus growing on all sorts of things, such as old food like bread or strawberries. It can be found growing inside our homes too. And of course, we find different fungus all throughout the forest.
So they grow in lots of spots. Wow, what a cool plant.
Well, actually, Taylor, even though fungus grows kind of like a plant, it's actually not a plant. They are classified in their own kingdom. What a crazy thought.
Hey, Amy, what do you mean by the term kingdom?
We as humans love to classify our findings. It keeps us organized. This image shows 6 different categories a living thing can be part of. These are termed the biological kingdoms, and I know you guys are quite familiar with a few of them, like the Animalia kingdom.
Like the whales last week.
You got it, Taylor. We also, as humans, fit into the Animalia kingdom. Let's see if you guys know another one. Taylor, any thoughts?
Oh yeah, Amy, we know the Plantae kingdom as well because we all studied the forest ecosystem together. Tree species would be grouped here.
That's right, Taylor. But today we are diving into a brand new group together. That is the Fungi Kingdom. Okay, so a few facts to start you guys off. Fungi only became recognized as a kingdom in 1969, so kind of around the time your parents were being born, probably because they're found growing in close proximity to plants.
And because you can buy them right next to the fruits and veggies in the grocery store.
Exactly. However, plants and fungi are so different in so many different ways, and today we're going to learn a few of these differences. In fact, fungi are genetically more closely related to animals than plants, so they are more similar to us humans than they are to those hemlock trees that they love to grow on. A cool thing about the fungi biological kingdom is the fact that there can be really, really small fungus and really, really large fungus, and we categorize them in terms of their size. There are microscopic organisms, micro meaning we as humans need a microscope to view these little guys. A lot of molds fall into this category because they're too small to be seen. And then you have macroscopic fungal organisms, which you can see from your naked eye. The difference between these two is the fact that macroscopic fungi produce visible fruiting bodies, like mushrooms. But today we are going to learn how the mushroom is just one part of the fungus that we see above ground. Underneath, there is a whole world to be discovered. Hey Taylor, what's going on in the forest right now? Are you able to see any macroscopic fungi?
Well, Amy, at this point in the year, we won't see too much macrofungus just simply because it's not the right time. However, if we were to return to this exact spot in the fall, our chances of seeing some mushrooms would dramatically increase. So this is because mushrooms prefer a certain type of habitat. So although different types of mushrooms grow in different spots during different seasons, the majority of them really like dark, damp, wet habitats to grow. And they'll find spots with a lot of food available because unlike plants, fungi cannot produce their own food. That's right, they're consumers, just like you and me. Mushrooms play a super important role in our forest ecosystem because they help to break down and cycle all the nutrients for the rest of the forest species.
Like Taylor said, fungi differ from plants because they cannot synthesize their food from the sun's energy. They lack chlorophyll, the substance which permits plants to use sunlight to form sugars from the water and carbon dioxide in the air. Therefore, we can say fungus is a heterotroph.
A what?
A heterotroph is an organism that cannot make its own food and therefore takes in its required nutrients from other sources of organic carbon, mainly plant and animal matter. If we were talking about the food chain, heterotrophs would be secondary consumers. Like humans, fungi need to feed on things to survive, and they do this through a process known as absorption, meaning the energy passes through the cell walls. But do you guys think a fungus could absorb a whole log into its body? Absolutely not. It first has to break down that log in a process that can take many, many years, depending on the type of wood and whether or not that tree was living. So the mushrooms in this photo are actually chowing down on this log.
So for a fungus to feed, it has to break down the substrate. And to do this, it releases what we call digestive enzymes. So a little chemical is released from the fungus and it'll help to start deteriorate whatever that fungus is growing on. So the enzymes begin to soften the wood, decomposing whatever it's growing on, so it's broken down into its components. And those dissolved nutrients can then be absorbed as energy. So we just learned that unlike a plant, a fungus has to consume. So it can't make its own food, and rather it breaks down a substrate to then be absorbed or dissolved into its cell wall. So that means whatever a fungi body part is touching, it can excrete those digestive enzymes and start absorbing dissolved nutrients. So let's take me, for example. Pretend I am a fungus. And if I were to touch my finger to this big tree that I would like to decompose, only my little finger touching the tree is the part that's going to be able to start releasing digestive enzymes. However, if I were to increase the surface area to my hand size and touch the tree, I'd be able to take so much more in. But if I were to hug the tree with my whole body, so every part of my body, the whole surface area is touching the tree, just like this, now my whole body can digest this tree and start absorbing nutrients. So we know that mushrooms are a really important part of a forest ecosystem because they help to decompose and cycle those nutrients. However, we have good mush or fungi, but we also have bad fungi. Let's discuss this a little more. So decomposers will only attack already dead substrate. So it's going to be those found on dead logs on the ground or a standing snag such as this one. They're really important to have in the forest because they help break things down and cycle all those nutrients. You might also find decomposers on food such as old bread or maybe strawberries. And again, they're just helping to break it down. Ooh, look at these ones. Wow, these ones look different too. So the second type of fungus that we might find in a forest isn't going to be as good as those decomposers. These are going to be things that we refer to as parasites. And so up here, you can see a parasite in action. So this fungus is attacking a living huckleberry bush here. So it's not going for those dead logs on the ground. Instead, it's attacking something that's living and trying to thrive.
Hey Taylor, what are those two types of vaccinium that we have here?
So we have two kinds on the coast. We have our evergreen huckleberry, and we also have our red huckleberry. This one here that we see is the evergreen. So here we are looking at a parasite called witch's broom, and it's infecting our vaccinium species found on the coast. So if we compare a healthy vaccinium branch to one that's infected by our parasite, we can see the difference. So these branches are nice and thin. They're starting to produce their flowers so that they can start to berry. But the parasite causes an extensive growth in the phloem each year. So you can see how fat these branches are getting, and they're actually hollow and squishy if you were to touch them. So they're really not having the plant grow healthy. So although our witch's broom rust is benefiting from living on this vaccinium, our vaccinium species is not. It's actually being harmed by it.
So when many of you think of a fungus, the image of a mushroom pops in your head. However, the mushroom is only a tiny part of the overall fungal organism. The mushroom is known as a fungus's fruiting body and actually only grows when the fungus is ready to reproduce. So what does the overall structure of a fungus look like, you may ask? Well, let me show you. A fungus is made up of a bunch of tiny thread-like strands called hyphae. These hyphae grow rapidly from a single spore beneath the ground, and as they branch out, they create a tangled mess referred to as mycelium. This underground network of mycelium absorbs nutrients from the surrounding environment by releasing enzymes. Once the substrate is broken down, the nutrients can then be directly absorbed into the hyphae strands. The hyphae can then transfer the nutrients to various parts of the network. The most amazing part about it all is the fact that the network of mycelium can grow to be an enormous size, spanning kilometers beneath the ground. Once the fungal organism is ready to reproduce, mushrooms will emerge from the hyphae and pop up out of the ground, just like these ones.
So why is it then that a fungus produces a fruiting body that comes above the ground? If the whole organism is beneath the ground or within the substrate, why do we put so much energy to have its fruiting body grow upward? So funguses reproduce using spores, and these spores are found on the fruiting body, which is the mushroom. So if the mushroom didn't come up out of the ground and instead was found underneath the ground with the rest of the mycorrhizal network, and it dropped its spores, those spores would then go directly beside those already inhabiting mycelium. So this means that they would have to compete with their mom, and the mom would take the majority of the resources because they're just little tiny spores amongst this whole network of mycorrhizal. So the mushroom has adapted to come up out of the ground so that its spores, or its reproductive properties, can then be spread throughout the forest by wind or animals brushing up on it, and it has a much better chance of having a successful reproduction. Now we're going to learn how funguses can take over a substrate and colonize it using its mycorrhizal network. We're going to learn how to spore our very own log. Hey guys, we're out in the field and we are going to do an at-home experiment for you. We are going to learn today how to spore logs so that we can grow our very own mushrooms at home. So what we have here are two finalized products of what we're going to do today. So these are two different trees that have been spored, and you can see all of these little patches of beeswax, and that's where we've put in a spore of our fungal property. So to help us with today's project, we have our friend Josh here. And in his hand, he is holding two pieces of wood. And that white that you guys can see there is the mycelium of the fungal body. All right, so first, before I begin to spore this log, I'm gonna make sure that my hands are sterile because I don't want any fungus or any bacteria that's on my hands to take over and colonize the log before my shiitake mushrooms do first. So, sterilized up. Okay. Now I'm gonna go in and grab every single one of these little wood pieces that are already colonized by our mushroom. So already colonized by our fungus. And you can see that the mycelium, so the hyphae network of different stringy goodness is already colonized this piece of log. All right, so I'm gonna put it into all of our drill holes and hammer on in. Get it, mycelium. So we now need to cover every plugged hole with melted beeswax. Josh is painting a thin layer over each to ensure no other pest, bacteria, or fungi can enter. We dip each end in as well to seal up the log completely. We want to give the shiitake fungus the best chance of colonizing this log. Wow, our spore log looks awesome. Now we got a super sealed up log. Nothing's gonna be getting in except our good yummy mushrooms that we want to grow. So an alternative way, so rather than using our logs that we spored here, you also can grow mushrooms within a bucket. So you guys can see, within this bucket there's a bunch of little wood chips, and this is acting as the food for the mushrooms. But on each little wood chip, you can see that white stuff? That's the mycelium. So the mycelium has totally taken over this bucket. So our bucket process is going to be so much faster than our log method. For a mushroom to take over this log, it has to eat all the way through, and this log was just cut a few days ago, so it's really hard wood, and for the mushroom to actually get in and decompose it, it's going to take a long time. Like Josh said, up to maybe a year. However, in a bucket, all of the chips are already been cut, and they're super small, so that's not going to take that long for a mushroom to decompose. So once our fungal body is ready to reproduce, it's going to produce its fruiting body, and it's going to come out of these little holes that you can see here. So kind of just like how our log looks, out of these little holes, mushrooms will be produced. It's the same thing for this bucket. All right, so inside this Tupperware container we can see here, it's kind of a smaller version of the bucket. So inside we can flip what was in the bucket out. You can see these little holes. So this is where mushrooms have already grown and Josh has already eaten. What a lucky guy. However, you can see that the majority of this in my hand is white. It's the mycelium, and there's not much food for it left. So that means that there's going to be no more fruiting bodies produced because this fungus cannot reproduce because it doesn't have enough energy. So here's what we're going to do. All right, so inside this bag, we have even smaller wood chips. So we had a really big log that was super dense. Then we had a little bit of like fine chips in here, but these are even smaller. These are the excess from chainsaw. All right, so taking the mycelium out of its old container, we need to give it more food. So we're gonna add it to this bag of wood chips here. So I'm gonna break it up and add it to our sterile wood chips. We've already made sure that there's not gonna be any other bacteria or bugs getting in that are gonna colonize this bag. We want our shiitake mushrooms to colonize it. Gonna mix it up. All right, we're gonna shake it up. This fungal body will now take over this bag and be able to feed on the wood chips and produce some yummy mushrooms for us to eat. Up next, we have our Hey Mark segment, where he's going to teach us all about the mycorrhizal network and the cool things that fungi can do. Hey Mark!
Whoa, look at this one! Oh, hey, Taylor.
What are you doing spending your day in that hole, Mark?
Well, I'll tell you, Taylor, I'm spending my day checking out one of the most fascinating life forms on the planet. Fungi.
Fungi, you say? So they grow in the forest, just like plants?
You know they do, but they're not plants at all. In fact, fungi are their own kingdom. And we're actually more closely related to fungi than we are to plants.
So Mark, do you see any fungus in this forest stand?
You better believe it, baby.
So what do we have here?
Oh, these little guys? So this is actually a lichen, commonly called British soldiers. A lichen is a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and an algae.
Mark, what's a symbiotic relationship?
A symbiotic relationship? That's when two organisms live together. So in this case, both of the organisms are benefiting. The fungus is a home for the algae, and the algae are photosynthesizing, providing extra food for the fungus. In fact, a lot of lichens even have a yeast in there as well.
So do those little guys have roots just like plants do?
Sort of, but not really. The really cool thing about fungi is the part that you see is only a very small part of the overall organism. Funguses can have hyphae extending through the substrate, through the soil, for many, many meters, and in some cases, even kilometers.
Whoa, kilometers you say? Why do they need to extend so far?
Well, the cool thing about these hyphal networks or mycelial networks is they almost form like a communications grid. Different fungi can interweave these hyphae in with plant roots and the roots of other trees around them, and they can send chemical signals across vast distances. In fact, almost every tree that you see in the forest, every shrub that you see in the forest is connected to its neighbors through these mycelial networks.
So what you're saying is fungus can communicate with one another underground?
That's exactly what I'm saying. In fact, the vast majority of the forest ecosystem is full of fungus. Did you know that the world's largest living organism is actually a fungus?
Whoa, Mark, that's pretty cool.
It sure is. Think of how big a blue whale is, and now imagine a single fungus extending through over 2,000 acres of forest, weighing 35,000 tons. That's almost 200 blue whales.
Whoa! So one more time, what do you call that network underground?
All those mycelia, they form a mycorrhizal network, Taylor.
Nice. Hey, Mark, thanks so much for that lesson. We'll see you around town.
Hey, Taylor, you got it. All mycelia around town.
Oh, Mark. Hey, Mark. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. I had such a good time and learned so much. Remember to do those Raincoast challenges, and on Thursday, we're going to bring it back and see what you guys have to share. If you guys find yourself in the forest and have the urge to post something on social media, use the hashtag Raincoast Field School. You can also be sure to sign up for our weekly email so that you can join our Zoom links and always be here to learn with us. All right, so that's it. We'll see you back here on Thursday to answer all of your questions and to see some of those Raincoast challenges. So get out in the sun or rain, whatever's going on outside, and have a great day.